Folks, welcome to the Community Safety Board, which has been conducted from the chamber here and remotely through Microsoft Teams. Can you ensure that your microphones are off, please? I think they all are. The meeting's now been recorded and will be made available on the CORL's website following this meeting. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. Are there any declarations of interest? There are none. Okay. First item is the minute of the meeting of the 23rd of November, and I'm seeking approval for that minute. Yep. Okay. Thank you. The second item is the minute of the meeting of the Civic Government Licensing Panel of the 21st of November of last year, 2022, and that's for noting. Third is the declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest that they may have in any items on the agenda, and it will be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so now by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams by using the raise hand function. No declarations of interest. Item 4 is performance management of the 2022-23 quarter 3 on culture and heritage, housing services, consumer and environmental services, economic development, energy unit, planning services, building services, and the island's growth deal. I'll be asking for a report by the Deputy Chief Executive, please.
Thank you, Chair. The element relevant to this committee is the consumer and environmental services, which is outlined beginning at paragraph 6.7 of the report. Happy to report that all the services actions are running to target. Some of the key work that the service has undertaken over the last quarter includes the food service having undertaken 115 food interventions. The service has also undertaken 410 shellfish registration documents. Other critical thing the service was involved in is the implementation of the short-term late licensing scheme, which became operational on the 1st of October 2022. And at that point, at the end of the quarter, it received 130 applications. These are the critical elements, Chair. Key thing is that everything is running to target, but happy to take any questions on that.
Questions? Thank you, Callum. Beg your pardon.
Second, Chair. Just a short question regarding short-term licensing. So far, is the revenue we're generating paying for the service that we're providing?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it should be. It's hard to tell because it's over a 3-year cycle, but it is on projection.
Further questions? Okay. Go next. Item 5 now is consumer and environmental services. And I'll ask Colin to comment on this in relation to this. Please, Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just it's the annual service plan for the services that we put up every year. We're kind of obligated to under kind of service framework agreements with various bodies like Food Standards Scotland. So it outlines all the work of the service. It's kind of detailed description of what the service does and kind of the various targets and actions we're working towards over the coming year. So the main priorities are listed in the body of the report, just at the end. They are pulled out of the annual service plan. So happy to answer any questions or comments.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. A question slightly left field. I don't know if Mr. Fraser would have the answer to this, but it's regarding wild avian influenza. Do we have any data collated as to the effects this may be having on our wild seabird populations around about the Western Isles? Or is that something for one of the environment agencies to have information on?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's probably better coming from one of the agencies. I know it's, well, AFA or kind of and DEFRA, the main leads in avian flu, so they may have figures or kind of further information along with kind of some of the nature agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Do members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Thank you. Police and Fire, Cornwall and Shear Local Police Area Performance against the Cornwall and Shear Local Policing Plan 2020 to 2023 and the report by Cornwall and Shear Area Commander, Chief Inspector Jane Mackenzie. Thank you.
Thank you. So the report has been circulated with the papers, and just to give a brief summary, this year we've seen a return to pre-COVID normality in terms of call volume and crime volume. An increase in domestic related offences, missing people, serious assaults, drug possession offences and shoplifting reports, and I'll refer to some of these matters later in the report. I'd like to take the opportunity to encourage members to complete the Europolice survey to inform the local policing plan. That will be discussed in the next part of the agenda, but the link to the survey is at the top of page 3 in the report. This is the first time I've reported to the committee, so I'm happy to take feedback and in relation to the content of the report. If there's anything you'd like to see, if you can let me know, and we can include that in the future results. In relation to road safety, thankfully we've had no fatalities over the previous few years, but that's not to say that we're complacent, and officers will continue to carry out proactive patrols, provide visibility and address offending behaviours. Statistics are given there for over the last 5 years, but just to give an indication of local statistics over the previous 3 months. For December, we had 7 reports for dangerous and careless driving, 6 for no insurance or MOT, 5 unfit through drink or drugs, and 7 judicial offer fixed penalties. November, there was 4 careless or dangerous driving, 3 no insurance, 1 unfit through drink or drugs, and 7 conditional offered. And then October, there were 6 dangerous or careless, 9 no insurance or MOT, 2 unfit through drink or drugs, and 21 fixed penalties. Road policing visits are scheduled for this year. And they are also looking to run Operation Close Pass, and that is to encourage drivers to give consideration to cyclists and respect their status as vulnerable road users. I'm aware there's been some activity on social media and discussion around road closures. We continue to work closely with partners in the Coast Guard and the local authority to monitor, implement, maintain and communicate regarding the road closures. And we've recently discussed how we can improve our processes in relation to that. Moving on to antisocial behaviour, you'll see from the report that drug offences have increased from previous years. This correlates to an increase in number of stop searches and proactivity. I'd like to appeal to members of the public, aware of this an open forum, and members of the committee to encourage their constituents to report information in relation to drugs activity in their communities, either through 101 or through Crime Stoppers. Youth issues have been a subject of discussion. I'm aware they were discussed at the last committee. I have established the Youth Justice Subcommittee, which is attended by all relevant partners and reports to the Child Protection Committee. All agencies confirm a reduction in youth offending and antisocial behaviour. Focus of the committee or the subcommittee is on effective early intervention and diversion activities, and we're in discussions with a partner agency with a view to funding for a dedicated officer for this work. These discussions are ongoing, and I'm happy to provide an update at the next committee. These assaults have increased over the period. They do sit above the 3 and 5 year averages, but there are no patterns to these offences or offenders. I've highlighted police assaults in my introduction and in the media release that went out last month. So whilst the numbers have reduced from the previous year, they still remain higher than the 5 year average. And Stornoway is one of the highest beat areas in the division in relation to police assaults. Police officers do not and should not come to work to be abused or assaulted. It's not part of their job, and it can impact on them in the same way as any member of the public. We do provide support to affected officers, And to address this, Police Scotland have amended their officer safety training programme with a focus on de-escalation techniques in addition to officer safety techniques that have been in use for years. We review each incident to establish any learning and we review the techniques used to improve how we protect officers moving forward. In relation to acquisitive crime, fraud offences have reduced over the period, but figures remain higher than the 3 and 5 year averages. We have prevention interventions officers who have undertaken work in relation to the banking protocol. That's a joint initiative between Police Scotland, banking institutions, trading standards, and this has proven effective with a number of interventions across the Western Isles. They also provide support to victims of online fraud, which has been a growing trend in recent years. It is one that's difficult to prevent, but we're certainly carrying out work to see where we can prevent that and taking every opportunity to do so. Theft by shoplifting, you'll see, has increased significantly, and we're working with retailers to look at premises layouts to establish if there can be minor alterations to reduce opportunity for theft. That said, we did have a significant increase in report from one premise who they certainly advised attending officers they were doing so to support their requests for additional staff or through their own companies. So despite the increases in offences, we do have a 94.9% detection rate. We also have to bear in mind the current poverty crisis in relation to that and ensure that we're providing support and appropriate referrals to partners when we're detecting these offences. In relation to protecting vulnerable people, continue to work with partners to focus on safeguarding our communities. We're actively participating in the ongoing joint inspection of adult support and protection for Western Isles. We have seen an increase in domestic crime and continue to work with partners to protect, support victims of such crimes. Some positive updates in relation to special constables. We're in the process of training one new special constable and retraining an additional one. They are an important and valued part of our team and communities and provide valued support to our community policing team. This coming year will be challenging for our communities as we face the cost of living crisis and for public sector organisations, including ourselves, all face financial challenges. This is why our good working relationships with partners are so important and we'll continue to work together to tackle problems, whether disorder related or people in crisis. And we've got a number of events scheduled in the coming year, including the Midnight Sun event in May, Headcount and EDF, all subject to licence, and planning is underway for these events. We look forward to them and the opportunity to interact with people, locals and visitors alike, and the successful running of the events. So I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Councillor Musgreen.
Thank you. Just looking at the graphics in the tables in the report, I noticed that there's comparisons with Orkney and Shetland in several of them, but not in the drugs one. I don't think. Yeah, assault, serious assault, and drugs possession. So is there any? Unless I've missed it, but is there any comparison? How do we compare to Orkney and Shetland?
But I'm happy to pass that information on.
Yeah, it would be useful to just provide a little bit of context, because if we're just standalone, it's hard to figure out how, I mean, it's all serious, but how serious these issues are. Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, a fellow councillor has contacted me about speeding vehicles in the Point area and requesting whether there could be speed checks carried out, particularly on the approach to Knock School from Seaview, which seems to be a particularly fast little bit of road with a bad bend at the end. But that's not my main question, really. Is there a crisis in staffing due to staff sickness or whatever in Western Isles?
I wouldn't wouldn't say there is a crisis. There is sickness, but that is within all organisations. And I would reiterate that we do have support when required, from whether that be specialist units or to maintain our staffing levels. So we maintain our staffing levels, our operational staffing levels. We've had support in recent months from, I'm sure some people will have seen circulations on social media from Dog Section were over recently, Firearms Team were over recently, Operational Support Unit have been over, Flexible Policing Team, and for Events Policing, but I wouldn't say it's in crisis, and we are maintaining it.
I've seen a text coming from the resource unit, seen it with my own eyes, and it was quote unquote due to another staffing crisis in Stornoway. And that was a text sent to an officer. I've also, and I appreciate that this is Police Scotland rather than yourself, and this is not in any way directed towards local management, but I am aware that staff are a bit concerned that there's maybe 2 police officers on for the whole of Lewis and Harris on a given day sometimes, and that I know of officers that are spending most of their rest days being called in on overtime to cover staff shortages, and that's a bit of a concern. Would you have any comment to make on that?
I can't comment on a text from Resource Deployment Unit. I'll just reiterate that our staffing levels are covered. That is sometimes through, or it is through rest overtime, extended shifts, and we are managing the levels, and some of that is by officers agreeing to do that. There is a focus on well-being, and we're very aware of that. And that is something that I'm highlighting within the wider division in relation to that. But we are maintaining the staffing levels. So I don't think it's at crisis level. We do have new staff coming, so we've got an additional officer coming at the end of this month. There's another officer waiting to transfer in, and another 2 requests. So we have the officers willing to come and work here, but we have a set number of base posts, and that's what we're working with.
But there are 2 leaving, aren't there?
Yes, but one of those is replaced by the incoming one.
Okay.
And there's another transfer request in for the one that's due to, well, that technically finished yesterday.
Okay.
So plus another 2 waiting to come, and the additional funding will support an additional officer.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Murray, there's that many Murrays in this chamber. Councillor Murray and I had a meeting with yourself a few weeks ago. We discussed perhaps the possibility of a bit of priority maybe being given to a town centre officer, a beat officer, a officer that will be walking the beat. Is there any progress on that at all?
Well, one, I'd be looking to establish timeframes for that. Is that daytime or is it an evening request? We're not getting reports of antisocial behaviour or offences that would justify that at the moment. There aren't reports from the town centre.
No, I appreciate that. It's just public reassurance.
Yes.
Really.
So, and the reason I ask about is it daytime or nighttime is that there are crossovers of shifts within the shift pattern that would facilitate that and make that more possible.
Yeah.
Perhaps. So it is something that is on our radar. And again, you know, it links into the shoplifting. So it is something that's there, but we cannot dedicate an officer to that.
Okay. I beg your pardon. Who have I got online here? I've got Callum, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's to do with the.
Okay. Finally.
Are you hearing me, George?
I am, yes.
Right, thanks. Thanks for letting me in. It's to do with. Thanks very much. I don't know what to call her, Chief Inspector Mackenzie, but for the report you've got here. And I just want to reference probably what a lot of people are more aware of nowadays is the drug possession. You highlight that there is in 2021-22 there was 101, up from 55. That's quite a substantial rise. You don't think there is organised crime from, as you call it, the county lines? Would you say that we have a problem in Stornoway in particular with drug possession, drug taking? First of all, would that be a question, first of all, Jane?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that is a fair question, given the figures that are there. With regard to county lines, we are not complacent in that, but there is nothing to suggest that that is ongoing in our communities. It is going on in other areas in the division. So we're not saying we're immune to it, but we're certainly not seeing evidence. But my plea in relation to intelligence links into that, because we're not seeing significant information coming in from members of the public raising concerns. So we do tackle that, and we are looking to address that, but we need the cooperation of communities and we need the information coming in to be able to act on. I would also say that we obviously have the partly funded drug detection dog, which they have been very active, and that will contribute to our numbers and some of the disruption activity that they undertake as part of their duties. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does in one sense. So you would say that the drug possession or the sale of drugs or the dispersal of drugs is more from within the islands. In other words, what do you call these mules or whatever they like to be called are in the island?
There's nothing to suggest we have specific mules, but the substances are coming in somehow. Yeah. And that's what we would like the public to assist us with information on. We can target the ones that are either dealing it or supplying it, but there's also the wider considerations around vulnerable individuals. There's obviously reference to cuckooing in the report. Again, that's not something that we have information on in our communities, but that's not to say that it couldn't be happening. But we need members of the public, including yourselves and your constituents, to assist us with that and bring that information to our attention so we can tackle it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the concerns are coming from parents, quite honestly. It's to do with their children coming home with tales that they've been offered this drug or that drug in the streets of Stornoway. More than likely, what I'm hearing, it's in the industrial area of Stornoway, in Bells Road area. So maybe that follows on from what the chair was saying, is that maybe patrols, what would be, that is policemen on the beat at certain times of the day. But that's just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Could I ask a follow-on question to that? Yes. If you press my button.
It's pressed.
Oh, sorry. You're on the ball. No, I mean, the information that I've picked up over the years and in recent years has been that most of it's coming through the postal system, that people are, the rumours that I hear that it's coming through the postal system. Surely if that is the case, then that bottleneck, particularly if you've got a bottleneck in Lewis and in Uist, then these bottlenecks provide opportunity for following on.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, they do, and we are very aware of that. And I'm not going to disclose techniques in relation to that, but that is a consideration.
Councillor Finlay-Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the Chief Inspector for her report. For a couple of things, really. The first thing is something that's been brought up on more than one occasion at these meetings, and that's these young guys going around the town on bikes at night with no lights, no high vis, dressed in black. And it's only really through my own experience of having a near miss with one of them on Bay Head 6 or 7 weeks ago. And then 2 nights later, witnessing another driver having a near miss with one of them. That I bring this up. As it happens, on the second occasion, I was driving out Bay Head and there was a police car stopped at Spar. So I went to speak to the officers there, and they said to me that there was really nothing they could do. That they had already spoken to these bikers, and that there was nothing that there was nothing they could physically do to stop them doing what they're doing. Which at in the point of our conversation, these 5 bikes went past us out the Porter's Lodge, no lights, nothing, all in black. So is there nothing at all, first of all, that can be done? Can they not be stopped and can they not be charged? That's the first question. The second thing is, and I'm glad Callum brought it up, the drug situation. And it's great to hear that there are more people being caught in possession of drugs. But my main concern is, like others, is the supply. And the Chief Inspector has asked that we come forward with any information that we have. I myself have given names to the police of people I know that are openly dealing drugs, openly, with cars turning up at their homes, and then someone going in and then someone coming out after having probably purchased what they needed, mostly cocaine, I believe. So that's what I would really like to see targeted. The people who are supplying these drugs to these young children, a lot of them, who then get themselves into debt through all that by this, just pay it later kind of thing. And you accumulate a huge amount of debt where other people then have to step in and pay all that, plus the effect it's having in homes. It's only when you see it firsthand in your own home that you realise the effect that cocaine, not everybody reacts the same to drugs. And we really have to make a huge effort, I believe. I know resources, and it's difficult to catch these people in the act. They seem to be a step ahead of everyone else. But I think we really need to try, as Councillor McSween said, to find out the method of how these drugs are coming into the island first of all, and then those who are openly supplying to be specially targeted, because that is the problem. It is the supply. So I'd just like to know what the Chief Inspector's comments are on these 2 subjects. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
So in relation to the young people on bikes and the for cautioning and charging them, we are limited in what we can do. There is also, for me, there's a responsibility on the individuals and their parents in relation to their activities. With regard to charging them, we still, depending on what they're doing, we don't automatically have powers to remove the bikes, and we have done that on occasion, and that has worked for those individuals. But it depends on the circumstances, and it has to be on a case-by-case basis. But in relation to cautioning and charging, they would need to be committing an offence, and these reports will go to the reporter. So, I'm not saying that there isn't work ongoing in relation to youth offending. It is part of the bigger picture in relation to youth offending, but I'm aware of the concerns around cyclists with no lights, and no high vis and dark clothing. But it's not as simple as cautioning and charging, and that's going to produce results. It just doesn't work that way. And then in relation to the drug situation, I am concerned about supply, which is why I've asked for that information. We need the information to enable us to go and request warrants. There's obviously a process to follow in relation to warrant applications and tackling drug dealers. That is the people that we need to be targeting as communities and need to be looking to have some focused activity on, because as you've referred to, people that are using these substances, it has a significant impact on home and family life and their ability to function in their jobs, in their homes, in their communities. But we cannot take that action without information.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Thanks for that, Chief Inspector. The only concern I have with the drugs thing is that by the time you get the information and by the time you can implement the action that needs to be taken, we live in a community that, as they say, word gets round, as we witnessed again probably last week with what happened across the road from me here. So that is the difficulty, I think, that we're not, and it's through no fault of anyone, that we're not getting to these people quick enough, and they're able to, when they get wind of that there's maybe something happening, they're able to shift on the drugs, and then when the police do turn up, there's no sign of them. So I don't know what the way around that is, but anyway, thank you, Chief Inspector.
Councillor Angus Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. I have spoken to the Chief Inspector outside this meeting prior to the meeting, but I think for the benefit of the tape and for the minute of the meeting, I think I would like to record the Gillis family's public thanks to the Chief Inspector for the professionalism that was handled when the tragic incident of the house fire in Cremore about 10 days ago. I've been asked not just at the attendance of the scene, but the follow-up from the officers afterwards as well, that to be commended for that. And I have been asked to publicly thank them. So I'd like to be passed on and minuted them into this meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Miss, Councillor Gordon Murray, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, and thank you to the Chief Inspector for the report. I just wanted to make a couple of points. Almost about information gathering and intelligence is probably key to any proactive strategy. And I wondered that we used to have police officers attending our community association meetings, and they would get a gist of what was happening in their community. And I wondered that it is a provision in the current staffing for police officers to attend community meetings, etc., because I think community engagement would help the police a lot in getting collective responses and themes rather than, a lot of individual responses. I think it might help them a lot. Is a provision there for officers to turn up to community meetings? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, there is the answer. It is something that I've looked at recently, and I was at the Stornoway North meeting myself recently. I'm aware that there has been a lapse in that due to movement of staffing, but it's certainly being reinvigorated. The officers will be attending. The community councils have all been reallocated, so they should be getting contact from their allocated officer. Whether that's changed or whether that remains, but it's certainly something we're looking to reinvigorate. Same with school liaison officers. Each school is allocated an officer, and people may not have had contact because I've only done this in the last few weeks when it came to notice. So that is something we are looking at reinvigorating.
Thank you very much, Chief Inspector. That's most helpful. Thank you very much.
Councillor Norman MacDonald, online.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks again for the report, Chief Inspector. I'd like to back to a couple of points that have been raised previously by my colleague Finlay Stewart in point. I've witnessed in Stornoway now the dealing becoming far more obvious than it's ever been. Taxi drivers take people from A to B at all kinds of hours in the day and the night time. And there was a time when they actually used to get out of my car to deal drugs. Now they just wind down the window. I mean, there's not a care being given now. about the dealing that's going on. It's pretty much in your face and blatant. So, you know, any resource that can be thrown, and I know there's a paucity of resources, which was touched on by yourself, Chair, earlier on, which is a difficult one, but it's certainly becoming very much more obvious and blatant. And going back again, I think I was the person who raised the issue of cyclists a couple of years back, going around Stornoway with no lights on. Can you clarify, Chief Inspector, is it an offence to be out on your bicycle between the hours of sundown and sunrise without a front light on your bike?
I would have to refer to the legislation. I'm not sure that it's an offence as much as something that's in the Highway Code.
Well, if I was to go around with no headlights on my car, would you stop me?
Yeah. Yes, if you're in the dark.
And does the same not apply to cyclists? I see a cyclist in England being fined £200 for having no front light on his bike in the hours of darkness. So it's either an offence or it isn't an offence.
It's different legislation in Scotland, so I have sought guidance from Road Policing Unit in relation to it.
The highway code in Scotland is different.
No, legislation is different.
Okay, so are you of the belief that it's an offence? Sorry, you're seeking to clarify whether it's an offence or not?
Yes, but you're speaking in relation to young people, and there is still no power to remove these bikes, depending on the circumstances.
I didn't suggest they get removed, but I think it's a pretty good idea. I mean, if I was to break any road traffic laws, you'd be pretty swift in either fining me or taking my car off me. Not saying you personally, but the law would certainly see to it that I don't contravene the Road Traffic Act or acts in any way. You know, I mean, is there a difference between somebody under 16 driving a bicycle with no lights and somebody over 16 if the law was to prevent them from doing so or make it an offence to do so? Is that why there's an issue with under 16s?
No, it'd be the reporting mechanism. So under 16 will go to the Children's Reporter.
Okay, but you couldn't prevent them in future from, you couldn't say there's no such thing as a two-strike rule. You know, you get a yellow card and you get a red card and your bike's taken off you.
No.
No?
No.
So basically there's nothing that can be done to stop these people. The reporter's not going to do anything anyway. That's pretty much evident because there's pretty much far more serious things going on in life than riding a bicycle with no lights until somebody gets knocked down and killed, obviously.
I'm not going to say the reporter's not going to do anything. They've got their own processes to follow and I can't speak for the reporter.
Yeah, but your hands are pretty much tied because effectively there's nothing you can do except report them to the reporter and then await the outcome of whatever the reporter decides to do. So police-wise, that's your only course of action that you can really take. I'm not criticising. If your hands are tied, then your hands are tied, unfortunately.
I appreciate it's not a criticism. We are very limited in what we can do when it comes to young people, and that's partly why we set up the Youth Justice Committee.
Yeah.
So it's about proportionate responses, diversionary work, and prevention work, and if we can manage to get this funded officer, that's partly to do with improving relationships between police and the young people in our communities. Because as has been alluded to, officers aren't able to go out in communities as much as they were. So some of the perception is that community policing has gone, and I can see why that is. And that's part of the purpose for looking for that post to be created. Because I'm aware of it. I'm aware of the impact on the community, the perception of it. And yes, we are very, very limited in what we can do.
Yeah, I think that's a public perception as well, Inspector Mackenzie. I think, you know, we're wondering why the police can't do more, and then, you know, you're explaining to us your own frustrations, and, you know, I think that needs to be conveyed as well. You know, there's only a limited amount that you can do. So, you know, I mean, I think our frustration is probably your frustration as well. So a better understanding of what's possible rather than expecting the police to jump in and take the bikes off them and stop them. You know, it's what can be done and how limited you are in the responses you can give when these matters arise. So I think it's a shared frustration. So thank you again, Inspector Mackenzie.
Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Chair. And It was just a small point. I noticed in your initial report, you mentioned a couple of times regarding resourcing certain policing priorities, such as the drug dog being partly funded. Where are those resources coming from? Are you having to bid on a platform for resources centrally, or is that from the amount of money you get annually from Scottish Government?
Thank you. Is that in relation to, so
That
in relation to
the Office of the Youth Justice
Okay.
Subcommittee.
no, so the funding for the part funding for the drugs dog is through the Drug and Alcohol Partnership. The funding for the officer for youth justice will be from a partner agency, who we're hoping to get full funding for that post, and for support from within the division. We don't have an allocated budget for the Western Isles Area Command. And I don't know what the divisional budget is. We're not cited in that, but what I will say, and I said to both councillors Murray previously when I met with them, we are not, there isn't an issue with us getting support and resources. If we ask for something and we are justified in doing so, we will get them. So for example, the firearms officers that were here, that was a justified operation, and there is no hesitation because we have to protect our officers and the public and our communities. So things are risk assessed in relation to that, but that's where the funding comes for these two posts. And yes, we do have an allocated number of officers for the Western Isles that we work with, but it doesn't come down to financial issues.
So is there ever an occasion where you bid for money but you declined it for a resource, as it were?
No, we don't bid for money.
No.
So my bid would be for an officer, and so we have a people board that meets once a month that discusses vacancies and transfers, and that's where that discussion takes place. There's also probationers coming out of the college, so I'm afraid we'll be getting a probationer in the coming months. That will be posted in Stornoway, which will be in addition to the ones that I've spoken about.
So it's standard practice. If you make a request, it's granted.
If it's justified.
And who'll tell you it isn't justified?
That could come down to divisional officer. It depends on what the resource is. If it's specialist resources, then it would go through, depending on what it was, could be through Criminal Justice Division or Operational Support Division.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Chief Inspector, for your report. I wanted to go back to youth offending, and I don't want to suggest for any man at all that any two cases are the same, but I think it is worth noting that I think it was 3 weeks ago in the Daily Record, which is not normally my reading of choice, but I'll just quote it. There were 3 young people, ages 11, 12 and 13, charged with vandalism, acts of vandalism in Motherwell and Wishaw, an area I happen to know well myself. And obviously they've taken a different tack in that situation because you've described twice, and absolutely accept the route you're going down is early intervention, diversionary activity, and you've spoken about that in your report and in answer to Councillor MacDonald. But in reading the report, and again, it was only a newspaper report, and I don't know how fully accurate they were, but a senior policeman was quoted as saying that this was something that they felt in this particular case had to be done. And I suppose it is sometimes necessary to go to that extent, and it may well have a reciprocal effect on others when they see that happening. I don't know enough about that case to compare it to cases here, but it is interesting to see that other divisions in Scotland have taken a different approach, perhaps. I think from my recollection, they also said they would normally go through diversionary or early intervention. obviously they felt they couldn't in this particular case, whether it was seriousness or continued actions, I'm not very sure. But I think it is important to note that that's there as a possibility to go down that route if it merits.
And Chair, can I just respond? So
Can.
we do caution and charge children, so we do charge them, but the process remains that the report, it's an offender report, is then submitted to the children's reporter. So whilst yes, our focus is on effective early intervention and diversion, that's trying to prevent them entering or being criminalised. But where circumstances permit, and we've been in that situation numerous times where children are reported for offences, it's not that we're not cautioning and charging them, and we will, but we'll also look to do diversion activities.
I suppose I didn't make that point very well. In the publicising of that is perhaps and I can appreciate that here that's very difficult without actually looking as if you're naming names, but it's perhaps letting it be known that that is a possibility, that is something that happens. And even looking at the statistics of, say, the vandalism one here, I don't think I would be going out too far on a limb to assume that the majority of these 76 instances of vandalism in 2022-23 were committed by younger people. Okay, there's nothing to say that,
No.
and it might be quite useful if it were broken down so that there could be a response. And obviously, the detection rate is low on that one, and running about in black with hoods up, that's hardly surprising. But yeah, I think maybe if people are aware, it's not just diversionary. And I don't mean to diminish that work by saying just, but that there is a possibility that people are being charged. I think that would be useful for the public to know that.
Thank you. So yes, they are. Yes, the focus is effective early intervention and diversion, but absolutely there are reports going in with charges against children to the Children's Reporter where there are offences committed. So if there is evidence of a crime and there is corroboration for that, we will caution and charge and report them to the reporter for that. As I've explained, the rest is ongoing alongside that, or to try and prevent getting to that stage. With regard to figures, given that our figures are quite low, and they have reduced to the levels that they were pre-spike, if you like, last year, we need to be careful that we're not potentially stigmatising children by publicising figures that are quite low.
Councillor Kenneth McLean.
Hi there. It's just to go back to the topic of drugs, as unpleasant as that is. I was just wondering, is there much being done down our end on Barra and Uist? It's just I know similar to some of the other councillors, I've been given the names of people, the same names repeatedly over and over again, of the folk who are dealing, and nothing ever seems to happen. And when people bring it to me, I ask, have you reported it to the police? They say yes, but it still continues. It's led to a number of overdoses here. It's led to some pretty horrific violent crime. I don't actually know how it's getting to the island. Obviously, we don't have a sniffer dog or anything like that down our end, but just curious to know if anything is being done. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So the dog is a resource for the entire Western Isles. There's no reason why they cannot attend there. And I would welcome a discussion with Councillor McLean off table in relation to the incidents that he's referenced. I would reiterate, we are not getting information about drug dealing. We're getting information about possession, and I would urge anybody here or listening in on this forum who has information in relation to drug dealing in our communities to let me know that information, because we are not getting the intelligence about drug dealers. And, I'll go back to what Councillor McDonald said about taxi drivers taking people from A to B. These taxi drivers need to be giving us that information, because how are we supposed to tackle that if we're not getting it? Officers want to do it. There is a desire that, you know, there are officers that want to be proactive and want to be out doing, tackling these individuals, but we're not getting the information to allow us to do that. And even once we get that information, the process is that we have to put it through the Procurator Fiscal to then assess the information and agree whether or not we can go to a sheriff for a warrant. So, but first and foremost, we need the information coming in, and I'm not confident it's coming into us to allow that action to be taken.
Councillor Martin, do you want to come back on that? No, you're off.
I was just thank you. I'll try and reiterate to people that they actually have to take it to the police themselves. I'll also contact you with the meeting about some of these incidents. Thank you.
No other lights on. I've just one last question then. Any progress on perhaps having the station open for a given length of time in Stornoway as the area command headquarters? Is there any progress on that?
That is my next meeting at 4 o'clock, is with the members of staff to just have that discussion. So obviously we've discussed it previously out with this forum. So that is my intention, but as previously alluded to, that will be with the agreement of the staff members, and I don't anticipate any significant issues, but that's scheduled for this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Chief Inspector Mackenzie. Do members agree to note the Chief Inspector's report? Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Inspector Mackenzie. Okay. Cornwall and Shear Local Police Area 2023-26 Western Isles Policing Plan. A report by Cornwall and Shear Area Commander Chief Inspector Jane Mackenzie. A link to the local police plans of 2023 to 26. Consultation was circulated to members of the board in late December seeking their views. And the Chief Inspector will give a verbal update on that draft. Please.
Thank you. So the local policing plan has been circulated. I'm happy to take feedback on that if members have any. I'm not going to go into it in any great detail given that the content is available through the link, unless anybody specifically wants it. But I would just urge members to respond and encourage people within their communities to respond, because your police survey, it's open until the end of March, but that is what informs the policing plan. So we're speaking here about drug dealing in our communities, about concerns around road traffic and cyclists. So I would urge people to complete the survey so that these problems will be taken into account and detailed within the policing plan for us to action in the coming years.
Thanks very much, Chief Inspector Mackenzie. And item 8, I believe, is performance monitoring.
The only item on there is due to be reported to the June series of meetings.
Thank you. Thanks very much. If there's nothing else, that will take us to an end of the Community Safety Board meeting for Wednesday, the 1st of February. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much, Chief Inspector Mackenzie. Appreciate it.